that structure can be difficult. When I was at film school, it was something I really struggled with, particularly three-act structure, which is weird because, that's basically writing for beginners, beginning, middle, end. The problem with it is that, three-act structure always was something I struggled with because the idea that you've got a very short first act with your inciting incident, your setup, a very short third act with your climax and your resolution, and a very long second act with literally everything else was something that I really couldn't wrap my head around. And it wasn't until I was introduced to the idea of five-act structure that it really started to make sense to me. Five-act structure is basically the same thing, except you break your second act down into three chunks as well, each ending in a turning point that propels your story into the next part. When thinking about structure, a mistake that I think a lot of us make is that we think about it in terms of writing by numbers. You think, I don't want to write like that, it ruins the naturalness of my writing, it ruins, the organicness of all of it. You want the story to flow organically, you want it to be artistic and beautiful and natural, and that's fine. Do that in your first draft. Write the first draft as though you're in love, write the second draft as though you're in charge. Usually you will find that your first draft will actually have some kind of structure to it anyway. It's making sure that each part of the story is working for you and moving it forward in a tangible way that is where structure becomes your friend. So, how does five-act structure work? Basically, I'll use Jaws and Harry Potter as examples because they follow it pretty closely. So, Jaws, first act, setup, Amity Island, Chief Brody, our protagonist, various characters we meet on the island, inciting incident, a girl gets eaten by a shark. Chief Brody tries to close the beaches, the mayor tells him, no, you can't do that, Brody's reluctant, and a boy gets eaten by the shark in front of everyone. That propels us into Act 2. In this, we've met our characters, we've become invested in our characters, we've had the event that kicks off the story, and we've had the turning point that heightens the stakes and leads us to the next most dramatic part of the story. Harry Potter, Harry lives in the cupboard under the stairs, everything's miserable, hates his family, everything sucks, finds out he's a wizard, goes to Hogwarts, new world. Now, Act 2 is where, usually, if you've started from a relatively mundane place or an even negative place for your character, things start to go right for your character. This is when you've got your hook in the audience and you reel them in a bit. Because if you've done your job correctly in Act 1, the audience will be invested enough in the character that they want to see them have some degree of success. Harry Potter does this perfectly. Harry goes to Hogwarts, he gets on the Quidditch team, he does spells, he makes friends, everything's amazing, everything's great. Even in Jaws, they go out, they try to hunt the shark, everybody in the town gets out there, they're throwing dynamite, they're trying to kill the shark, it's all hands on deck, everyone's trying to do it. And then at the end of Act 2, somebody gets the shark. Somebody gets the shark and it's like, yes, we've got him, it's great, it's all happening, we've got the shark, everything's great, they take the big photo with it, but the turning point is, it's the wrong shark. The turning point at the end of Act 2 of Harry Potter is, Troll in the Dungeons, somebody's trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone, there is a conspiracy going on. Which leads us into Act 3, where things start to get complicated for our characters, things start to get rough, things start to get difficult. In Harry Potter, they're trying to solve the mystery of the stone, nobody believes them, Hagrid has an illegal dragon, how do they deal with this? Meanwhile in Jaws, they try to convince Mayor Vaughn to close down the beaches, he won't believe them, nobody will believe them because they've all caught the shark, they're all deaf to it, they open the beaches, heaps of people turn up for the 4th of July, and the shark attacks. Things go terrible, things go wrong, which leads us into Act 4, where things start to get really bad. So if you think about it in these terms so far, Act 1 you set things up, Act 2 things go right, Act 3 things are kind of touch and go, Act 4 things go wrong. Harry gets caught taking the dragon, trying to get him to Charlie, Harry gets a massive detention, loses heaps of points for Gryffindor, is wildly unpopular, everything sucks. Act 4 is our dark act. Act 4 is when things really suck. It can be referred to as the all is lost moment, which usually is a moment that happens somewhere between the start and the end of Act 4, but it's the most downbeat stretch of the film. In Jaws, they're like, we have no other option, we have to go out and kill the shark. Within that, of course, there is room for happiness, there is room for good stuff going on. In Jaws, there's lots of funny, great stuff on the boat. I mean, Quint is, a very colourful, very exciting, very entertaining character, but the circumstances are still tough. The circumstances are still dark. They are out there alone on this boat hunting a shark, and they are the last sort of port of defense, I guess, against this monster that's been killing people all throughout the film. In Harry Potter, they go into the Forbidden Forest. Harry comes face to face with Voldemort. He realizes that nobody's going to believe about the stone. He has to go under the school and get it himself. In Jaws, Act 4 ends with Hooper going down in the cage and apparently getting eaten. All is lost. Everything sucks. What are they going to do? Which leads us into Act 5, climax and resolution, sometimes a twist of some sort. In Jaws, the shark attacks, Quint gets eaten, Brody has to try somehow kill the shark, climbs up the thing, shoots it in the air tank, blows up, happy ending, Hooper's still alive. In Harry Potter, they go under the school, they face various obstacles, and then finally Harry comes face to face with Quirrell, finding out it was him all along, and gets the stone, happy ending. Five-act structure is fantastic because it really makes you look at what each part of the story is doing and how the story escalates and how it kind of arcs from relatively mundane start, reasonably successful second part, pretty complicated third part, things get really downbeat, and then your fifth part should end in a pretty good place for the characters. But of course, it depends on the story. I mean, if your story is a tragedy, your fifth act isn't going to end happily. If your story starts with the character in a really happy place and is about something happening that ruins their life, then your second act isn't going to be one of success. Your second act is going to be one of things getting worse. But you still have to make things more complicated in the third act. You have to find a way to always make sure you're raising those stakes and escalating the story to the point where you eventually reach the climax. But we'll get more into that in future weeks.